G'day guys, and welcome to another episode of the Modern Medic. Today, I'm really excited to bring on a guest onto the podcast / video blog. I'm not sure what you call them, but we've got Matty Pepper, the new TACMed National Training Manager. So it's his first time on the podcast, and I've got no doubt it's not going to be his last. So welcome to the show, Matty.
Thanks very much, Jez. Good to be here, mate. And hello to everyone out there in Modern Medic World.
Awesome, mate. So just for everyone who doesn't know you, can you just give us the quick intro on who Matty Pepper is?
Yeah, no worries, mate. So I'm a paramedic by trade. I live up on the northern beaches of Sydney, which is normally sunny, but currently seems to be a bit of a deluge going on. My background's 7 years in the Army. Then I've been in the ambulance services for about 14 years now. Got 4 kids. Mate, I'm mostly passionate about pre-hospital care, training, instructing, that sort of thing. And obviously, you know, the reason that I'm here working for TACMed is because I really quite passionate about making sure that we can provide or teach people to provide first aid medical care in any situation, anywhere where, you know, an injury might occur.
Yeah, awesome. And I think we're going to delve a bit deeper into who Matty is and what makes you drive. So you mentioned that you started your career in the military, I believe was as a CAV officer. Can you tell us a little bit about that, and then how you transitioned from, I suppose, Army officer into a medical career?
Yeah, mate, no worries. So obviously, I didn't do anything medical in the Army. I was all arms corps orientated. I spent my first year in the Ready Reserves back in 1996 before John Howard squashed the scheme, which has now been reborn by the same government into it's the gap year, I believe it's called, isn't it? Exactly the same scheme as we had back in the 90s.
Yeah, I think it's called the gap year now, 12 months or something between uni.
Yeah, that's right. So I did my 12 months, but then just absolutely loved the Army, so I stayed on. Went down to ADFA and Duntroon, and after Arty, I went into CAV and loved my time there as well. So when I got out, I sort of spent a couple of years not really sure what I wanted to do next and trying out a few things. And I ended up traveling around the world for a year and meeting my wife over in South America and having an amazing time. But throughout that time, I was really sort of trying to figure out what I was going to do with my life, you know, where I was going to go from here. And it's pretty hard when you start your career in something so amazing as the Army, where you have that incredible feeling of camaraderie and belonging and like you're giving something back to society. So I spent a lot of time while I was backpacking around the world just thinking about what I was going to do. And I came up with a number of what I sort of called pillars, or, you know, big criteria on what I wanted to sit my career. So the first one was that I wanted to work in an outdoor setting. I wanted to be able to work in an area where it was always different. You weren't bound to an office. The second one was something academic, where I really needed to use my brain and really needed to something where I could really research and think and get into the deep dives on things. So obviously that eliminated the fire service straight away.
I was going to say, are you sure? Did you just say you started in artillery?
I did, yeah. Did you not know that?
Mate, academia and artillery, I don't think they go together, do they?
Mate, the science behind guns is incredible, and you really need to know that as you're loading the round into the 105mm howitzer. I've come a long way, Jez.
Yeah, that's good. I'm glad.
The other sort of pillars that I was basing what I wanted to do on were after academia and working in an evolving and different sort of environment, where something that I really was going to give back to society and be working with my hands, something skills based. And when you think about those things, it's actually pretty hard to find anything that fits all those sort of criteria. And ambulance just sort of jumped out as the one thing that I could do that would fit all those categories. So the transition was interesting. I sort of dove pretty deep in. I went straight into QUT and studied paramedicine there up in Brizzy when the course had just first started. A bit of a different world back then. The commissioner got up of Queensland Ambulance and said, anyone who finishes this degree gets a job.
Oh my God. As opposed to now, where there's hundreds of young kids coming out of university, not being able to get a job and having to go to London and whatnot to even get a look in.
That's right, yeah. And we're really lucky as well because there was no shortage of positions available, we actually worked as casuals right throughout our degree. So it was
Oh,
a pretty
wow.
amazing experience. Yeah, it was incredible.
Wow.
You're sort of learning academically and doing the hands-on at the same time. It's a unsustainable model to be able to do that in the future, but it
Yeah.
was the best learning environment I could have gone through. So
That's really
it was really
interesting.
cool.
And so when you were studying your degree and working casual, what level did they have you all working at? I assume it wasn't qualified sort of ALS level.
No, so we just worked as the equivalent of a first year student from the diploma program.
Okay.
So we worked 2 up on a truck
Yeah.
with a qualified ACP or ICP, mainly ACPs.
Yeah.
Guys would turn up to lectures straight from night shift, and it was fantastic. It was just a really, really interesting way to be able to learn in that environment.
Yeah. Wow. And so obviously you stayed with Queensland for a little bit after your study. And I believe you've worked obviously in a few other states, and then through Churchill Scholarship and things like that, you've also got to travel the world a fair bit, Matty. Can you tell us a little bit about, all those other services you've worked for, and then some of the overseas services that you've sort of done ride-alongs with and sort of studied through those scholarships, and, just some of the differences and similarities between the services and the jobs and some of the specialty units and whatnot around the world?
Yeah, mate, no worries. After I qualified as a advanced care paramedic in Queensland, I headed down to Canberra. I was actually intending to go to Sydney, which was the deal that I'd made with my wife, that we were going to go back to Sydney after I finished my degree and qualified. But a job came across the email inbox that offered to do a graduate, or to be able to apply for a graduate ICP program down in ACT. So we headed down there, and was fortunate enough to be in the very first graduate ICP program in Australia. I'm not sure there's been any others or many run since, or in any other services, but it was a pretty amazing opportunity to go down there and go straight into the ICP program, studying right through to qualification. Just a couple of years after I finished my degree, which was amazing.
Yeah, was that when ACT was all dual ICP cars?
It was during the process of changeover, so they were
Right.
just about to bring in the new sort of ambulance paramedic level.
Yeah.
We just came in just before that. But yeah, at the time it was, so I worked with an ICP the whole time, worked at the ICP level, under supervision. So once again, just really fortunate that I got a great opportunity to learn in a pretty unique environment.
Yeah. That's awesome. And obviously for the last, before we were lucky enough to pick you up, you've spent the last, was it 7 or 8 years with New South Wales Ambulance? I think we'll delve into a few of those roles next, but you got to travel overseas with a scholarship and look at some places. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, so I've been overseas a few times. Once again, just really lucky that things have fallen into place for me in the right times and the right opportunities. And so I've worked quite extensively overseas throughout USA, UK, and Canada. And so that, plus working in 3 ambulance services and the military, when you look at the variations and similarities, it's amazing how similar it is.
Yeah.
You talk to anyone, who's worked in those sort of different settings where they think that it's going to be really different. You get there, it's the same thing, right? It's the same people. It's the guidelines are a bit varied, but really in the end, your patients are what dictates what you do. So while you might have an expanded or decreased scope, you might have some different equipment. Culture might be a little bit different here and there. It's the same people. There's a Jez and a Matt pretty much in every ambulance service that I've been to.
It's funny talking to obviously Timmy up there in Canada. It sounds like very similar patients calling for the same shit, different country, as they say.
That's it.
I was,
Yeah.
in Oklahoma at the end of last year and talking to those guys, and it is just the same wherever you are around the world, isn't it?
That's it. Yeah. Sometimes the mechanism of injuries change a little bit. I work with some guys in Oakland, and there's obviously, they're doing 2 or 3 shootings a night in there on a normal car. So some of the mechanisms change, but in the end, that just becomes a normal job for them. And while in Australia, we have a much more predominant sort of blunt MOI, it's really just the same patients for the most part. Absolutely. And all the specialist units, great guys, amazing teams that I've worked with. The one thing that really resonates with me about those guys is the sense of brotherhood. And that really exists across emergency services. Everywhere you go, there's a patch, a coin. There's, come and have dinner at my house, meet my family. I've been sitting in Leeds in a really good mate's family home eating a curry with his grandfather.
Yeah.
All those things.
Yeah,
They're just incredible. Being picked up in a fire engine by NYFD.
Yeah.
All those things are just amazing.
Mate, that's awesome. And in all these travels, have you got a favourite or one that you suppose have that most professional jealousy? I mean, for me personally, when I travelled to LA and got to hang out with the LA County Sheriff Department, their Special Enforcement Bureau, with the SWAT medics and air rescue, for me that was just like ultimate professional jealousy in terms of like their scope, their equipment, and then the workload that they go to.
Yeah, I think for me, Ottawa is right up there. They have a pretty unique system. They train really well. They're extremely well integrated with their special weapons and tactics teams, and they work with a number of levels with the Mounties, with some international military units. They have a really unique skill set, and they have the ability to apply that across these different levels, locally, sort of nationally, internationally. It's a pretty cool system. And I think when I first came across those guys and then was looking at the way that we could set things up here back in Australia, they were pretty much one of the exemplars for how you can do it and how professional it can be. Actually, I think those guys won the National Tactical Medical Competition last year, which is a testament to how
Yeah, right. Yeah.
On the back of the Australian team.
We weren't in that. We weren't in last year's, obviously. But obviously they sound pretty good anyway.
Yeah, mate. LA Sheriffs, I think they take the cake in terms of the team that's got the work plus the training plus the equipment and the role.
Oh, definitely, mate. Those guys have got a very good job. Now, Matty, obviously you've spent the last 7 or 8 years with Ambulance New South Wales. Tell us some of the different roles you've done. I don't think we ever worked together, did we? When I was down there in Sydney as an ICP.
No, I think we might have missed each other by a bit. I was on the north, working really hard at all those nursing homes. So,
yeah.
Mate, when I came across, I was a qualified ICP from ACT. So, skill set probably a little bit more expanded in ACT with RSI and some extra medications and a few extra bits of equipment like surgical airways and that sort of thing. So, lost a little bit, but it wasn't really much of an issue because we weren't doing a lot of that, using a lot of that expanded scope in ACT.
Yeah.
But the one thing I did miss was ketamine. That's something you use almost, at least every week, if not every shift or two, when you're doing a bit of major trauma. And that was hard to adjust to not having that. But luckily, New South Wales has picked up the game in the last few years and brought that on.
Yeah, we've done a previous podcast on ketamine with the critical care paramedic Timmy McCready, who was Queensland and then jumped ship almost literally to Canada. So I don't know what episode that is. I think it's episode 2 or 3. So if anybody wants to have a listen to us chat about ketamine, there's another episode on that you can listen to on the Modern Medic podcast.
Mate, but I sort of went into being an intensive care paramedic in New South Wales and adjusted fairly well. And I really just enjoyed the challenge of working 2 up in a car and just doing some great work and having some good people at Narrabeen and then Ryde Station. Working on the west of Sydney is a great place to be and make a big difference out there and go to some really interesting jobs. So that was just an awesome few years, just practicing my craft and getting better at it. On that sort of, I think as a paramedic, we're always on a continual education process and self-reflection and trying to make yourself better than you were yesterday.
Oh, 100%, really mate. I mean, the day you stop learning is the day you need to give it up, isn't it?
That's it. Yep, absolutely. Then I went to special operations and working as a soddy on road for sort of the last 5 or so years, which has been amazing. Like from a pre-hospital care point of view, like just the best job. Working as a single, going to some mad work and having that challenge of being there by yourself and doing a bunch of SOT stuff as well and sort of getting a lot more into the tactical world and the police support operations as well. It's been an amazing challenge there.
That's awesome. And then so moving on from ambulance, obviously, you said how much you have for the love that you have for learning and training. You've done a fair bit of study, Matty. I mean, I had to trim down your bio to fit it in there in our little corporate booklet. Can you tell us a little bit about the areas you've studied and your interest in your professional development and learning?
Absolutely, mate. So like I said, teaching and instructing and and academia a real passion of mine. Started off with a Bachelor of Arts in History back at ADFA. I can't really tell you much about that because I can't remember anything. But I think something like a Bachelor of Arts in History is a really interesting piece because it's not something you directly use in your work life at any stage, but it's about there was that term that we used back then, the gymnastics or the weights room of academia of your mind. It's about learning how to research, learning how to think rather than learning what to think or being prescribed things that you will use in a future career. It's a really cool concept, actually. And I think that's something that in Australia we're losing a little bit, is the idea of an education that doesn't have to be directed towards a particular outcome.
Yep.
It's just about thinking and researching.
Yeah.
I really valued that experience of going through the BA. It was cool. Or scraping through the BA, let's say. And then after that, mate, I started at QUT with my Bachelor of Health Science in Paramedicine, which very, very different sort of degree. Then when I went down to Canberra, I pretty much straight away went into doing a graduate diploma in disaster response through Monash, which is fantastic. As I was doing my ICP program in Canberra, I sort of was doing that study at the same time, and set me up really well for the future in terms of thinking about disasters, thinking about the way that we can respond in difficult environments, even though I wasn't really working in that sort of setting at that stage. And I pretty much articulated that through in 2014 after I finished studying a master's in disaster resilience, a master of philosophy, so a research-based master's program. And then I sort of toyed around for the first year. My plan was to study climate change and the impacts that was going to be having on what we do in pre-hospital care and medicine. But I ended up taking it on a bit of a different angle after 2014, going to the Link Cafe and then doing the Churchill Fellowship program. And I pretty much directed it towards tactical medicine instead from there. And that was a really interesting process, and going into learning about all the different ways that you can sort of provide care in high threat and tactical environments.
Yeah, awesome. I mean, before we jumped online, I was trying to think about when you and I first met, and I can't actually recall when we first sort of met. But was it the Link, being in special operations and then the Link Cafe? Was that the sort of that the linchpin or whatever for you to move into the interest in tactical medicine? How did you get that interest and passion?
Yeah, it was really after Link Cafe. So I'd already had it in my mind, an idea that was a field that I wanted to explore. I can remember saying to one of my army mates back in about 2011 in Canberra, I see that there's this area, this vulnerability in Australia where we don't have a specific or directive way of doing care in police support operations specifically. And I sort of had this idea that maybe that's something, with the experience from the army, knowledge of strategy and tactics, and then also combining with pre-hospital care, that maybe that was somewhere we could move into. But at that stage, it was really just an idea, and it was only after the Link Cafe and joining special operations that I started to formulate some real ideas about it. And so the Link Cafe has essentially exposed a whole bunch of capability gaps for us. So, you can clearly see it if anyone's seen some of the presentations from Ollie Ellis, where he talks about, our vulnerabilities in terms of the equipment, the training, our ability to be interoperable with the police. There was a lot of things we could improve on. So it was after that I went for the Churchill Fellowship, not long after the Link Cafe siege. Yeah. And I guess in response to not having a lot of after action reviews and self-critique that we did as an ambulance service, sort of taking it on myself and with the other guys like Ollie and Macca to go and start doing some more research and then building a capability from there. So yeah, the Link Cafe was the stimulus for sure.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. And I think, I don't think you guys recorded the presentations on that first year of ATMA, but I know Scott McNamara gave a really good presentation on tactical medicine and special operations in New South Wales Ambulance in particular, and obviously had the support there of, was it then the commissioner or whatever at the time, but that was that was a really good presentation that Macca gave.
Yeah, yep, absolutely.
I suppose, mate, that is a good segue into the next thing I want to sort of ask you. So obviously you're the founding president of ATMA, the Australian Tactical Medical Association. For, I suppose, the listeners, what can you tell them about what ATMA is and what you guys do in your role as president?
So I guess it's comes from where we've just been talking about, the idea of trying to change things on a local level and enhance a lot of capability. We brought in some new training. We got some better equipment for working in high threat environments, particularly with police and in tactical settings in New South Wales Ambulance Special Operations. And then from there, it was sort of starting to expand into some ideas about where we go in the rest of the state and nationally. And I was going, I did this presentation. I went to the Council of Ambulance Authorities meeting up in Brisbane. I went up there and I presented on these ideas and put this concept in front of them that we should go and change things and make it a national standard. And I just had the feeling that at the end of the day, they were like, well, who is this guy, Matt Pepper? Who does he represent? What is he? He's not representing ambulance necessarily here. And it was in that void of representation that I sort of came up with the concept. And Tim McCready's and I first came up with the idea that we build something. We build some sort of national representation. And so that was where in 2017, from the conference that TACMED sponsored for us to put on in Sydney, we came up with the idea of building an association. We didn't really know where we were going to go, but we knew that the core idea was going to be about collaboration to try and break down silos. And so that's what that was really about. It's about education, empowerment, collaboration, trying to build the connections, give people the ability to access subject matter experts, have a central repository of knowledge and build that knowledge. I think we've done that pretty well in terms of, the Journal of High Threat and Austere Medicine, some of the research grants we've done. The conference is a huge networking and collaboration opportunity, but also it stimulates research. We actually, I don't know if you saw the post that came out from ATMA the other day about mass casualty incidents and hospital settings. That was actually the idea came from ATMA in the first place, from ATMC. And the author has got back in touch with us and let us know that it's sort of full circle, that now we're helping to spread his research that came from the ideas that we were presenting. So
wow,
that makes me feel very happy about it.
All the guys in the committees and members of ATMA should be, super proud of what's been achieved in really a very short period of time. It's been under 3 years since that sitting down and voting in a board of directors and obviously president and secretary and stuff. So I know for us as a company, TACMED, it is just amazing to go there and to be able to sponsor the event. And it's just, we go to a lot of conferences, as you know, and it is one of the most engaging conferences we've been to around the world. And it was awesome at that last one, speaking to some of the international speakers that, they just do the rounds and they just, all the positive things they had to say about ATMA. So, for all those listeners, if you're not a member of ATMA, or you haven't been to one of the conferences, I highly recommend it. I think you guys just released the dates, didn't you, for this year, for 2020?
That's right. Yeah, 9th and 10th, I believe, of September in Brisbane at the Pullman Hotel. Same location as last year. It's shaping up to be another amazing conference.
That's awesome. And so for anybody that wants to know more about ATMA, I'm fully putting you on the spot here, Matty. What's the web address, or how can they get in contact with ATMA?
www.atma.net.au.
.net.
If you Google us, we've headed up we've shot up the Google rankings, so you should be able to find us on Google.
SEO is on point. Now, Matty, I just want to have a bit of fun for the next few minutes. I put it out on Instagram the other day that we were going to do this podcast, and that if anybody wanted to ask any questions to yourself, and so I'm just going to bring those questions up and just do a quick fire session from the Instagram questions. I think half of them we won't have to go through because they're all just about how amazing your hair is and what you do for them. So we might skip that and we'll just do a quick fire question from Instagram. Is that cool?
Yeah, mate. Absolutely.
All right. So here we go. Timmy McCready. Are those shoes tactical?
Interesting that Tim picked up on that, because I had a blowout that day of my Salomons and I had to wear some non-tactical shoes. So well done, McCready's. Well played.
Straight on it. So the Max Graham, he's asked, how different will tactical medicine look in 20 years?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question, Jez. it's not one that I've thought about a lot, but I think, like with the pace of change in medical technology, I think it's going to be very interesting. But, you talk about things like foams for junctional hemorrhage and that style of innovation. But I think at the core, it's not going to be a significant change, because in the end, what we do is very human based, right? Like it's the equipment is amazing, but it's an aside to what we do as humans. That's why I think, human performance, human factors, crisis resource management, all those things, decision making, OODA loops, that's the stuff that really builds tactical medicine. And it's very much more a human thing than it is a gear thing. So yeah, I think there'll be some significant changes, but I think it's going to be it's going to still look very similar in 20 years.
And I was thinking the same thing. I was thinking, in terms of technology and medicine, I was definitely thinking about those non-compressible bleeds that are traditionally, high mortality, very difficult to treat. I think we'll certainly have some changes in that aspect,
Yep.
for certainly for the penetrating trauma and whatnot. It'll be interesting to see what happens with some of the treatments of traumatic brain injury. But I suppose 20 years, I suppose I started my Army medic career 20 years ago, and not a massive amount has changed. There's been some big progression and data that backs up some of the things, and obviously some of the myths have been busted. But yeah, I agree. I think it's going to be about the human factors, and maybe a lot of that personal protection, and obviously the intelligence and AI that might hopefully prevent some of these incidents that sort of lead to tactical medicine.
I think drones probably is going to be something that's going to really affect it as well.
Yes, yeah, very interesting. Obviously, there's some stuff coming from Israel and definitely the US with drones dropping fresh whole blood and whatnot into areas.
Absolutely. Yep.
So gun shoes and Band-Aids asks, is it true that Chuck Norris checks under his bed for Matt Pepper?
Nice.
Yeah. So your medic boy asks, when did you first hear about us, TACMed Australia?
That's an interesting question. Yeah, it's I'd certainly, before I was involved in tactical medicine heavily in ambulance, TACMed was already around putting gear out there. So yeah, I mean, it's been a build. I knew about you, Jez, probably before I met you, and I certainly knew about some of the gear that was coming through. So yeah, it's been, I'd say, about 6 years.
Yeah, I want to say it was Ollie that introduced us as well, wasn't it?
It was actually, yeah. Yep. Which is interesting, because normally the introductions that Ollie makes, I don't tend to follow up on. So
I hope he listens to this. Billy Thomas asked, post-grad in tactical medicine versus healthcare in remote and extreme environments.
Awesome. So I've done a bit of teaching on the grad cert in tactical medicine. So and I've run the last 2 res schools. So I've got a little bit of buy-in with that course, and I know that it is a fantastic course. That it's very much specific to what we do, in particularly the civilian setting for tactical medicine. We've had a few military graduates as well, but an amazing course. Albin's put together some incredible content. So I think, certainly if you were going to be very much focused on the tactical side, that's the course for you. But healthcare in remote settings is very much more about the austere and the complex sort of response. So it depends on what you want. That course, for sure, if you're going to be working offshore, I've done a bit of work with Border Force back when we had lots of work up north with the customs ships. And that, in those sorts of complex and austere settings, you want something a little bit more outside of the strict tactical realm. So I think it's, it depends on the individual and what they're after from their education. Yeah,
definitely. I think they're very different courses, and it's going to depend on what you want to achieve. Obviously, I personally know Eldon, when he helped set up that course, but I mean, we certainly have no affiliation with what's the university?
Central Queensland University.
Central Queensland, yeah, CQU, that's right. And we've done a webinar with Eldon, but we'll try and get him on this podcast. But I don't personally know anyone that's done the healthcare in remote and extreme environments. If anybody listening has done it or knows someone and they'd be wanting to have a chat, we'd be more than happy to have a chat, bring them on the podcast and talk about that. So thanks. The next question, I'm going to skip a few again about your hair and taking the piss about Aussies putting shrimp on the barbie. Thanks, Eric. Mr. Grimes 97 asked, do y'all cover canine medicine?
So a fledgling area in Australia, really. We've got, through the military, there's some pretty strong connections, both with dog handlers and medics. It's part of the initial course for medics going into Special Operations Command. In the civilian setting, we've got a lot of restrictions due to the veterinary laws, which stop us from actually treating dogs in the pre-hospital setting. So it's an area of, that's very small in the civilian side and that we want to try and build into. And we've actually got a canine working group with ATMA, and we're trying to push some more information out on that setting. But we really need to work with the Veterinary Association first to try and define some of that legality around what we do. It's a bit different to the US, where you've got the ability to treat dogs. It's legally mandated in a lot of states that you can do that. But yeah, we've got some complications here. Certainly for urban search and rescue, where they deploy overseas from Australia, the task forces do train with canine first aid, and they're able to apply that overseas as well.
Oh, 100%. Because I think when you talk about tactical medicine and canine, people think it's all about the furry land sharks, what do they call them? The Malamute?
Belgians.
Yeah, the Belgians. But obviously with USAR, and we know with everything that's been happening in Australia at the moment, and a lot of the disasters, that canines are used for a lot of search and rescue components, and obviously the bushfires as well for that crime scene role as well. So it's not just about biting bad dudes.
Yep.
Longman Blades, he's asked quite a few questions. Oh, sorry, he's just got one there. No, he's asking what careers you had before tactical medicine. I think we've already talked about that. Blue Piggy Pigs he's asked a few questions. I might just finish it off with one. It's 3 of your top tips for tactical medics.
I think number 1, know your medicine first before you do tactical.
Yeah.
I think that's a pretty big one. You get a lot of people wanting to move into tactical medicine. I think you just need to be a really good medical provider before you do that. You want to have everything squared away. Same as moving into something like special operations team. You want to be a really good paramedic or medic before you go into that world, I think, for sure.
Oh, definitely. I mean, your basics are so important. Your basics just lay the foundations for anything else. And to be honest, can make the biggest difference too before all the icing on the cake with the advanced interventions.
Absolutely. Second one would be relationships. It's like tactical medicine is very, very much about, especially when you're working in a med support role for a team of shooters, whether it's military or civilian, it's about relationships. And so it's very much based on those relationships before you can get the trust to provide good medical support. I think that'd be number 2.
Yeah.
Number 3, I'd say just training, and that's what we do with TACMed. Now that I've come on board as a training manager, it's very much about building training, building situational awareness, getting the micro skills right, then introducing them in through some reality-based training into some bigger, more complex sort of settings, so that people can be at their best on the day when they need to access those skills again. I think training and doing training right is the most important thing we can do in tactical medicine.
Definitely. I mean, there's no point training if you're not training right.
Yep. Absolutely.
Cool.
Hey, Jez, one just came in from my MySpace page. It just popped up on the. It's
2006.
They've just asked, "Is your beard real?"
Is my beard real? Yeah, I stopped shaving about 35 years ago, and this is the best I can do.
And War Jockey 91 has just asked, "What sort of product do you use in your beard?"
I'm trying to keep this at PG, so we'll move on. So thanks for answering those Instagram questions, Matty. Just a little bit of fun to throw in there. I think there's some good takeaways too, not just fun. So thanks for everyone on the TACMed Instagram page that helped us with those questions. I suppose, Matty, just to wrap up our talk, our little podcast here. Obviously you've just started with us, which we are absolutely stoked to have you on board. But it's a pretty big move, mate. Moving from all those years of working in the stability of a government job. What are you excited about with your new role as National Training Manager with TACMed?
Mate, I'm stoked to be on board as well, Jez. Thank you. It's really good to be a part of the company. I think that TACMed's really at a space where the evolution's occurred to a large extent already, and it's on the verge of a lot more evolution and building, which is super exciting to be on board at this stage. So I'm really excited to be part of that process, but also I think the transition from being a tactical medical responder, being an intensive care paramedic, to stepping back and then enabling others to perform the training, perform the responding, to do those roles. It's a hard one to get off the tools and move back, and hopefully I can still stay on the tools a bit as well. But it's about enabling others to try and step in. And I think through TACMed, we can actually have more force projection on, enabling people than I could as an individual anyway. So that's what I'm most excited about, is being able to get out there and really build an amazing team of instructors and provide the best level of training to as many people as we can.
Oh, awesome, mate. That's, obviously we've, talk a lot offline. So I'm, we're stoked to have you on board, and we've got no doubt that you're going to be able to, help a lot of people who work in those complex and high threat environments. And, I think that'll indirectly help save a lot of lives going forward. So we're really excited about the future. So that sort of wraps up our chat, Matty. Now, obviously, the Modern Medic, we've got the podcast. We've also got a Modern Medic community, which is all about sort of that CPD learning in a pretty informal sort of TACMed environment. We're going to open registrations again, or enrollments, I should say, to the membership, where we've got obviously a closed Facebook community, and then our online learning, where we've got a bunch of different stuff, wound packing, ketamine, stress response, penetrating trauma, march, hypothermia, blast. We've just finished aviation physiology that's about to go up there this week, obviously first week of Feb, so that'll go up. So if you're interested in learning more about the Modern Medic, Matty's going to have a lot to do with the Modern Medic this year. You can jump on www.themodernmedic.com and just pop your name down an email. You'll get a copy of Dr. Dan Pronk's arterial tourniquets for law enforcement. But that'll just put your name down on the email list there. So when we launch it, that you'll be the first to know. So, Matty, mate,
and if there's any content that anyone wants on the Modern Medic, let us know. Anything that the training team and I can provide, any sort of directions that people want to go with CPD stuff, let us know. We'll build that up.
Yeah, it's going to be a wicked year, 2020, for the Modern Medic. I mean, we've got a bigger team with a varied experience, so we're really looking forward to pushing that community more and more.
Awesome.
All right, Matty. Well, mate, thanks again for jumping in, and thank you to the listeners of the Modern Medic, and we look forward to talking to you on the next podcast. See you guys.